Versus MS is actually a global campaign that Sanofi Genzyme has run to try to define the true impact of the disease on patients' lives. It was primarily a survey which was administered to both patients and caregivers. So over 1,000 patients were surveyed and over 500 care partners were surveyed with a variety of questions, really extensive questions exploring sort of all aspects of the disease on their physical well-being as well as their social, emotional well-being. We had a strong suspicion that the disease is very significantly impacting patients in ways that the larger community may not necessarily understand. So essentially, we were looking to, confirm that suspicion, which I think we did. Many people when they think of MS, they just think of the physical, potentially, in severe cases, the patient in a wheelchair, with ambulatory difficulties, but they're not necessarily seeing all the other problems that individual may be, or challenges that individual is facing. So the purpose of the survey was to try to, expose some of those. Across the gamut, right, of things, we saw, on the physical side, heavy reports of, fatigue from patients, that being a major problem for them. Patients were actually quite open with us that, up to a third of the patients in the survey reported that that urinary problems are actually a factor in terms of them deciding to leave the house or not, which again is something that you wouldn't necessarily see in just your, when you're looking at an MS patient, out in the world. Patients also reported cognitive difficulties, right, which actually was very interesting because I think it was half of the patients in the survey reported that they have some level of problems with memory, which is interesting because, up until 5 or so years ago, the MS community was actually still arguing whether or not cognition and memory was actually even involved in the disease. So that was a nice confirmatory piece of data. And then on the sort of social front, many patients were concerned about their relationships with their spouse or significant other, and then the care partners too, because we surveyed them. We actually found that up to half of them were hesitant to discuss their fears, the care partners' fears of the disease progressing, because they didn't want to upset the person with MS by discussing those topics. You would like to think that these are things that patients would talk about with their physician, but often visits are very short, and you can't necessarily get all these topics out. I can tell you also from a physician's, neurologist perspective, that on the other side of the desk, that limited time is in the back of your head, and that there's just certain main topics that you need to cover, mostly centering around how they've been since the last time, kind of a general question, and then on treatment, and usually the session is the appointment's over at that point. So even as a physician having these sorts of things, being exposed to these sorts of things, hopefully will be a reminder to interject some of them into the appointment. Sanofi Genzyme is truly committed to doing as best for the MS community as we can. And I think that this is an extension of that mission, of that desire. it doesn't per se, do anything directly for us. It more does something for the, hopefully does something for the MS community as a whole. I think it was a highly successful campaign. We launched with the data on World MS Day, which was May 25th of this year. I mean, the response has actually been quite loud and strong and in all positive ways. As an organization, we're quite pleased with the response. We want to publish the data for sure, both in areas that patients would have access to it, as well as places that HCPs, physicians would have access to it. So, I mean, those are generally patients and physicians are reading different materials, but we think that the data that this campaign uncovers is actually important for both groups, so that they're on the same page when they're having that appointment. I think the future is bright. The MS field is exploding. Prior to the early 90s, there were no approved treatments, and today, we have many treatments. Our company currently has 2, approved therapies out there, and we're committed to being in this space for the long haul.